Warwick's Q is one of the most unique abilities in all of League of Legends. Not only does it deal damage and heal him based on that damage, it also makes him immune to displacements while casting. But the real game changer lies in this one mechanic. While Jaws of the Beast is active, Warwick clamps his jaw on the target, following all of their movement. That enables a lot of insane interactions, from following blinks and dashes to dodging hard CC at the perfect moment. And in this video, I'll be showcasing all of these interactions inside of Practice Tool, but that's not all. I also want to show you how they look and feel in a real game. So throughout the video, I'll be including clips of real games through info cards in the top right corner. We'll start off with the miscellaneous interactions, and once that's covered, we're going to move on to the champion-specific ones. Timestamps for each interaction are, as always, in the description or in the pinned comment below, so please enjoy the video now. Okay, our first interaction is just normal flash follow. Just cue them at the right moment and you're going to follow them wherever they go, preferably over a wall. Okay, the next interaction is TP, but TP actually got reworked. So instead of having a blink now, where you can just cue the enemy and blink with them to the other side of the map, you are now going to dash with them together over the map, but for some reason, after following them through half the map, Warwick is just randomly getting stuck on terrain or just falls off randomly, like you can see it here. And also, it's way harder to time it now, because before they start dashing, they just float up. And there you can see he just gets stuck on the terrain. Okay, next interaction is with Dragon, because when you attack him, he usually knocks you back. Just Q him and you can dodge the knockup. The same also goes for Herald. Just Q him right before he starts dashing there to dodge the knockup, and then you're also going to be in the perfect position to hit his eye. Next up we have Blast Cones, because when somebody is going to fly away, you can just Q them and follow them there. Obviously this also works for normal Blast Cones, but I just showed the Chemtech version to show that it also works on the bigger range. And also another very nice interaction is that you can Q somebody while they go through a Hexgate. So you can see, I'm going to Q him and then I'm going to be on the other side at the same time as him without using the Hexgate myself. So if I like Q follow him and then I notice, oh, I messed up, I can actually use the Hexgate portal to go back. Alright, for the next interaction, you can Q over small walls with Warwick. Like for example, this wall in mid lane, if the enemy is really hugging the wall, you can just Q over that small gap there. And another example would be this wall in front of your base. But this really only works if the enemy is hugging the wall. Warwick's Q range isn't that big, but it's big enough to get over those certain walls. Okay, this next interaction is about roots, but displacement immunity actually doesn't counter roots. It's actually more about Warwick's dash or leap itself, because roots don't knock you down, meaning that they don't stop the movement when you're inside of them. So when you're going to start up Warwick Q and you get rooted, your dash will not get stopped. So on this example on Jinx, you can see I dash through her with my Q, get rooted, and with this I'm buffering my Q into her root there. Another example can be seen on Senna W, like she's going to W me here, and right before I get rooted, I Q her to buffer my Q into her root. So while I'm rooted, I'm actually still moving with my Q. Okay, I'm having Renata here for another example of the root, because here the root buffer actually matters a lot. If the Renata just insta recasts her Q, like, look here, she's going to Q me, I get hit, I'm buffering my Q, and because of my Q, I'm displacement immune, but I'm still rooted. But she insta-recasted, and I'm not getting thrown anywhere. Compared to this example, where the Renata hits me, I'm buffering Q again, but this time she waits, and now she can throw me. So, if the Renata is greedy and tries to insta-throw you, while you're buffering your Q, it actually makes you immune to that knock-up. Alright, starting off with our first interaction is Aatrox Q, because with Warwick you can dodge Aatrox Q's sweet spot knockup. Next up we have Aatrox W. you can dodge the pull by queuing. And then you can also follow Aatrox E with Warwick Q. Okay, the next interaction is about Ahri, where we only have one interaction, and that is Q following her R. Okay, the next one is Akshan. There we also only have one interaction, and that's following his E. But this is a very important one, because this is Akshan's only escape, so if you can follow it, you're going to be perma on top of him. He cannot get away from you then anymore. Next up, we have Akali. First of all, we have her E2 recast that you can follow. Then also, obviously, you can just follow her E1. And then you can also follow both of her R's. Like you can see the initial cast. And then also the next cast, you can follow her too. Okay, next up is Alistar, where you can dodge his Q knockup. And then you can also kinda dodge his W. Like you can dodge the knockback, but you'll still get stunned for a certain amount. So you're just dodging the displacement, but not the stun from the W. Next up we have Ambessa, where you can just follow her passive, because after every single ability she can dash. So after her Q you can follow her, after her W you can follow her, after her E you can follow her. You can also follow her R, but you can also dodge her R by queuing either her or nearby entity. Okay, on Amumu, you can only Q follow his Q. This is especially useful when he tries to escape from you and wants to like Q jungle camp or so, trying to get over a wall, and then you can just follow him with that. Okay, next up is Anivia, where we can Q over her wall, because if you remember where we spoke about the queuing over small walls, if the enemy is hugging Anivia wall, we can just Q over it here. Then on Annie we have a very interesting interaction, because you can Q follow Tibbers to follow back to Annie, because Tibbers TPs to Annie when Annie gets out of range. So if you like know that an Annie is running away but the Tibbers is fighting you, you can try to time it to TP back to her, but of course you need to be careful to not TP into a turret like here. Next is Aurelion Sol, where we can Q follow his W. And it kind of depends how many stacks he has, because then he flies further and further, but not faster. His movement speed during his W depends on his own movement speed, not on the amount of stacks, so we can only follow him a certain amount. Here, for example, you can see where Aurelion Sol has more stacks. You can still Q follow him, but because he's moving so slow, you cannot follow him all the way through. You're just gonna fall off eventually. And then the next interaction is about Aurelion Sol's R, because here you can see his normal R, we got stunned, but on his empowered R, it's actually a knockup instead of a stun. So when he's going to hit us with his empowered R, we can actually dodge it. So remember, you can only dodge empowered Aurelion Sol's R with your Q, not the normal one. The normal one you will get stunned, the R empowered one is dodgeable. Next up we have Aurora. Aurora, you can follow her W, just Q her when she is jumping over terrain. Next up is Aurora's R, because when she touches the edge of her R, she TPs to the other side, so when Warwick Qs at the right moment, he can TP with her to the other side. On Azir, you can follow his E, so when he tries to dash away, you can just Q follow it. And because Azir's R is a knockup, you can just dodge it with Warwick Q. The soldiers will just phase through you. Very easy. Okay, against Bard E, you can actually Q follow him through his portal, as you can see here. And the advantage of that is that you're not coming through the portal where he can easily Q you and stun you. Here you are on the other side. Of course, in this scenario there's a wall behind you, but if he would have angled it differently, there usually wouldn't have been a wall behind you, and then he couldn't stun you, he also only could slow you with the Q. And what's also very interesting is displacement immunity grants immunity against stasis, so during Warwick Q, you can just dodge Bard R with that. Against Bel'Veth, you can follow her Q, her empowered Q, because only that can go over walls. And you can also dodge her W knockup with your Q. Against Blitzcrank, you can dodge his pull. You still get stunned, but I think dodging the pull is a more important factor to surviving. And you can also dodge Blitzcrank's E knockup, so when you see his starts start glowing, you know that this next ult attack is going to knock you up, so just Q him there, and you'll dodge the knockup. Against Braum, when he jumps to an ally or to a minion with his W, you can follow it with your Q. And you can also dodge Braum's R knockup. You still get slowed afterwards by the field, but dodging the knockup is what's important to you here. Then against Briar, you can do a lot of things. First of all, you can Q follow her Q when she jumps over a wall. Then you can also follow her W with your Q, because it's also a dash that goes over walls. You can also dodge her E, which is a knockback, so when you Q at the right time, you can dodge the knockback completely and not get thrown into a wall, for example. And the best interaction with Briar is that you can actually Q follow her R. Don't Q her yet, you are going to wait until she hits the target and does that special animation, this one. Now you Q her, and you're going to follow her through the whole map. Against Caitlyn, you can Q follow her E, because her E is a small dash that can go over walls. Against Camille, you can Q follow her initial E cast, but you cannot follow the second one, because after the first follow, you see you're right inside of her, and then she just stuns you when she wants to recast it. And you can also Q follow Camille's R when she jumps onto another target, which also makes you dodge the knockback that the field would create normally. Against Cho'Gath, you can dodge his Q knockup with your Q. For Corki, you can only do one thing, and that's Q following his W when he tries to fly over walls. So whenever he runs to a wall, just Q him, and you probably get a follow. Against Darius, you can dodge his E pull at the right moment. It's a bit hard to time, so you kinda need to predict it though. Against Diana, you can follow her E dash over walls with your Q. And you can also dodge her R knockup. And with that, when you dodge that, you're also going to dodge the slow coming from that. Against Draven, you can dodge his E knockback. And against Ekko, you can just Q follow his E, because it's just a dash going over a wall. And you can also Q follow Ekko's R, so when you can time it right, you're going back to the clone with him. You're still going to take the damage from his R, but sometimes it's worth following him. Against Azir, you can just Q follow his E over a wall. It's just a blink, so you're going to reappear on the other side of the wall with him. Against Fiddlesticks, you can Q follow his R blink over a wall, so whenever he's trying to flank your teammates and you're right beside him, you can just press Q and also not get feared because you're in vision then, of course. Against Fiora, just simple, following her Q with your Q. Against Fizz, you can Q follow his Q, and you can also follow his E. And when he's doing both casts fast enough, you can follow both instances of his E there, as you just saw there. And you can also dodge Fizz R knockups, so you see the countdown. If it's like 1 or 2, you're just going to Q something and then you're good to go. Against Galio, you can dodge his E knockup. Like, even when he dashes straight on top of you, your Q will go off first, meaning that you are going to get this displacement immunity first. And you can also dodge Galio R knockup, so when you see the symbol appearing, like 2 or 3 seconds later he's going to land there, you just need to Q somebody and you can dodge the knockup with that. Against Gnar, you can follow his E with your Q. Even when he makes a double jump, you're going to follow it all the way through if you hold your Q. And you can also dodge Gnar R with your Q. It's a bit hard to react to, but you can kinda try to predict it when he's like standing near a wall or his Mega Gnar form is running out. Against Gragas, you can Q his E. You will still get stunned, but you can dodge the knockup with it. This meaning you can also follow Gragas E over a wall. And you can dodge Gragas R, which is a knockback, by Qing somebody. So whenever he is throwing his castle, you can try to react to it and then dodge it. Against Graves, you can Q follow his E dash over the wall. And you can also Q follow his R, because his R also makes him dash backwards a little bit, which can also go over small walls. So you can also just Q follow that. Against Gwen, you can just Q follow her E over the wall, because that's also just a normal dash. Against Hecarim, you can dodge his E knockup with your Q, but you will still get stunned for a short duration, but it's definitely shorter than together with the knockup. And you can also follow Hecarim R with your Q. The thing is, when you're at the end, with him together, you're still gonna get feared. Against Hui, you can dodge his E, which is pull to the center, and with Warwick Q you can then just dodge it. Against Irelia, you can Q follow her Q, because that's just a point and click dash. And against Ivan, you can Q follow his Q, so when he's going to hit somebody with his Q, he can dash to them. So you're just going to press Q whenever he does that. And you can also dodge Daisy's knockup, so whenever he spawns her, every third auto attack, you can see the symbol, is going to be a knockup, and then you can just Q at the right moment to dodge it. Against Janna, you can dodge her Q tornado knockup, and you can also dodge her R knockback. Usually she knocks everybody back, but when you Q at the right moment, you're just going to stay right on top of her. Then you can also follow Jarvan's EQ combo, which is pretty easy to react to, because first he has his E animation, which is big, and then his Q animation, which takes long. So pretty easy to react to. Also a very nice mechanic against Jarvan is that when he Rs you and walks to the side of his wall, you can just Q him, and then you're outside of his R, making a great escape possibility there. You can also Q follow Jarvan R, so when he wants to jump on your teammate from the other side of the wall, you can try to predict it and just Q him there. Against Jax, you can Q follow his Q, for example when he jumps to a ward like here. Okay, the next mechanic is about buffering Warwick Q into Jax E, because Warwick Q works like that he doesn't deal damage whenever he casts his Q. Like, you know, you cast your Q and then there's a little bit of a delay where he bites the enemy and then deals damage. You are going to use it here, where you're going to cast your Q while Jax E is ending, and that cast time is going to buffer into Jax E running out, making you actually hit him. Like, you're still going to get stunned. That's why I enabled health bars here. Like, you can see, I still get stunned, but Jax still takes damage. Like, look at Jax's health bar. I Q right at the end of his E, and my Q still goes through. Like, it's high risk, high reward, because if you're going to Q too early, you're just going to get a Q wasted and he might run you down. But it also helped me out in a lot of situations against Jax players. Against Jace, you can Q follow his Q over the wall. But more importantly is that you can Q dodge Jace E. You only need to do it early enough, because otherwise you get rooted. And then, as we talked in the miscellaneous stuff, that while rooted, you cannot be displacement immune. So you need to root him, no, you need to Q him early so you can dodge the knockup. Next up is Kai'Sa. Against Kai'Sa, you can Q follow her R dash. And against Kalista, you can Q follow her passive, because after every auto attack or Q, she can make a small jump, and then she can jump over small walls, for example. And you can also Q follow Kalista R. Like, when she pulls in the speared target, you can Q follow that to get right on top of her. And I mean, I didn't show it here, but you can also use your Q to dodge the knockup from the target. Like, you can see here, I am going to get knocked up there, but you also could dodge that with Warwick Q. Against Kassadin, you can just Q follow his R because that's also just a blink. Against Katarina, you can Q follow her E there when she dashes to an enemy. And against Kayn, you can Q follow his Q, which can go over walls. Rast or Red Kayn has a knock-up on his W, meaning that you can dodge it with your Q. And against Kayn, you can Q follow him through his E over a wall, but only through one wall because he's just moving way too slow. And you can also Q follow Kayn R, so when he infests an enemy, you can just Q follow it to go with him to that ally. Against Kha'Zix, you can Q follow his E to go over the wall. And you can also follow Kindred Q over the wall. Against Kled, you can dodge his Q pull knockup, but you will still get damage and anti-healed. But it's still nice to not get pulled into him. And you can also follow Kled E with your Q. And you need to keep in mind that on his second E cast, like on his recast, he can also go over walls. Here I couldn't show it, but just keep that in mind. And also one thing I forgot to show here is that you can dodge Kled's R knockup with your Q. Meaning that even if he is coming straight at you, like similarly to Galio, you need to imagine it like Galio's E. Similarly to him, you can just Q him when he runs at you. Your Q is going to go off first, granting you displacement immunity. So you won't suffer the knockup, but you will still get all the damage. Against K'Sante, you can dodge the Q3 knockup. You will still get stunned, but you're not going to get knocked up and pulled towards him a little bit. The same thing goes for his W. You can dodge the knockback, but you will still get stunned for a short duration. You can also follow his E over walls, so when he dashes to his teammate, you can Q follow it. And you can completely counter K'Sante R with your Q. So you can see K'Sante tries to R me, and if you Q early enough, you are not going to get rooted, similarly to Jace, and then K'Sante just goes over the wall without you while you are going to stay there, because he cannot pull you, because you are displacement immune. Against LeBlanc, you can Q follow her W initial cast, but you can also follow her W2 recast, where she blinks back to her mirror image. And when she's doing both of those fast enough, you can follow both of them. See, she dashes over, you follow it, and then she blinks back, and you also follow that too. Against Lee Sin, you can Q follow his Q when he dashes to an enemy. And you can Q follow his W when he dashes to a teammate. You can also dodge a Lee Sin R knockup. So, similarly to K'Sante and Jace, when he's going to Q you, you usually get rooted, so you need to make sure that you Q him early. But if you pull it off, he's just going to kick you, but you're not going to fly anywhere, and so you're going to stay right on top of him. Against Leona, you can Q follow her E when she dashes to a target. And against Lilia, that's also a speciality of being displacement immune, is that for some reason, when you're displacement immune, at the end of being drowsy, you're not going to fall asleep. So whenever you're about to fall asleep, just Q a target, and you can completely dodge it. Completely. Against Lysandra, you can Q follow her E when she blinks to it. And you can Q follow Lucian's E dash over the wall too with your Q. You can also dodge Lulu's R knockup, because whenever she R's somebody, people around her are getting knocked up. So with Warwick Q, you can dodge that. Against Malphite, you can dodge his ultimate knockup with your Q. Against Maokai, you can dodge his Q knockup with your Q. And against Melee, you can dodge his Q ball knockback with your Q. So whenever he's going for the animation, you're close to him, you can just Q him, and then he has no self-peel anymore. Against Mordekaiser, you can dodge his E pull with your Q. But most importantly is that you can dodge Mordekaiser's R with only your Q. So whenever he casts it, you just press Q, because displacement immunity prevents you from going into his realm there. Against Neferi, you can Q follow her E over the wall. And you can also Q follow her R. When she points and clicks a target and dashes to them, just Q her and you'll follow her. Against Nami, you can dodge her Q suspension, which is like a stun and a knockup, but because the knockup applies first, you're going to dodge it all together. And you can also dodge Nami's ult knockup with your Q. Against Nautilus, you can dodge his Q pull with your Q. You will still get stunned, and you can see that Nautilus actually pulls himself closer to you because you didn't move, meaning that if you can dodge his Q, he's going to be a bit closer to your team then. And you can also Q follow Nautilus Q. When he like Qs a wall, just press Q on him and you're going to follow with him all the way through. And you can also dodge Nautilus's ultimate knockup. You will still get stunned, still deal damage, but sometimes it's important to dodge the knockup when the enemies have a Yasuo or so. I mean, this is more of a useless one, but you can dodge Nico's R knockup, so you don't get knocked up, but you still cannot dodge the stun part. So I don't know, maybe you can Q the knockup and then R wait at the right moment, but it's like not really worth it to dodge the R knockup. Against Nidalee, you can Q follow her W over the wall. And against Nilah, you can Q follow her E over the wall. And you can also dodge Nilah's R pull with your Q. Like against Nocturne, you can actually Q follow Nocturne R, as you can see here. And because he's also moving so fast, you're going to follow him all the way through there too. Against Nunu and Willump, you can Q their W snowball. You still get stunned, but you're going to dodge the knockup. So if the enemies have a Yasuo, it could be useful. Against Orianna, you can dodge her ultimate pull inside. You will still get stunned, but it's a way shorter duration than like flying to the other side of the Orianna first. Like you can see here, the flight time on the second one was way longer than on the first one where I actually dodged her ability. Against Ornn, you can dodge his passive, like when you see that brittle symbol above your head and he wants to auto-attack you, you can just dodge it by queuing him. And the best thing is that the mark gets consumed, but he's not proccing it. So you're not getting any damage and the mark is also gone. You can also dodge Ornn E knockup with your Q. And you can also dodge Ornn's R knockup on his recast with your Q. Against Pantheon, you can just Q follow his W when he wants to jump over a wall. Against Poppy, you can actually Q dodge her E. Like when she also just runs at it straight up, you can just hover your mouse a bit in front of your Warwick from where she's coming, and you're still going to get your Q off, and then she doesn't knock you back. So with that, you can actually set up a pretty good bait by like positioning yourself like right beside a wall, her thinking she can E you into a wall and one-shot you, and then you just instead queuing her and then she just dies there. And because Poppy is also a dash, you can Q follow her E also when she E's onto an enemy on the other side of the wall. And you can also dodge Poppy R, both variants. The short one and also the long variant. Against Pyke, you can dodge his Q hook, like everything of it. You're going to dodge the whole pull. Of course, you're still gonna get damage, but you're going to dodge the hook. And you can follow Pyke E with your Q. For example, when he goes over the wall here, you can just Q him and follow him. And you can also Q follow his R, because when he hits an enemy, he's actually blinking to them, whether or not he's executing them. So you can just Q him and blink with him. Against Qiyana, you can Q follow her E when she goes over the wall onto an enemy. And against Qiyana, you can also dodge her R knockback, meaning that if you Q at the right moment, you're not going to knock back into the wall, which is actually going to stun you. So you can see here, she tries to R me, and then you just Q her. And one thing I forgot to mention here is that you can also follow Qiyana's W, which is also a small dash, her jumping to that element she's choosing. So she can also use that to jump over walls. So you can also just try to Q her when she tries to jump over a small wall with her W. Against Quinn, you can dodge her E because that's a knockback, but you can also at the same time Q follow her E, meaning that it's a 2-in-1, you dodging the knockup and you following her only movement ability. And when she's also standing close to a wall like here, you can just follow with her over the wall. Against Rakan, you can dodge his W knockup, and this works very well against him because he needs to be near you, so every time when he goes for that, you just can Q him to dodge it. And because Rakan W is also a dash, you can Q follow it. And because you're still displacement immune at the end of the dash, you're also not going to get knocked up at the end of it. And you can also follow Rakan E when he dashes to a teammate. Against Rammus, you can dodge his Q knockup, so when he's just driving into you, you can Q him, your Q will proc first, you get displacement immunity, and you will dodge the knockup from that. Also, the same thing applies for Rammus' ult Q, because during his Q when he ults in the center, he's going to knock up people. So most of the times you can also just Q him before he lands to dodge the knockup. Against Rek'Sai, when she's in her burrowed form, you can Q her to dodge her knockup when she comes out of it. And you can also follow Rek'Sai's burrowed E when she creates a tunnel. This obviously also works when she's just normally using a tunnel to get to the other side. Against Rel, you can kinda dodge her W, because you can dodge the knockup but will still get stunned. The same thing also applies for her remount W. You can dodge getting knocked back behind her, but you will still get stunned. But you can follow her dismount W to follow it over the wall, for example. And you can also dodge the initial knockup from her R. You're still going to get pulled afterwards, but you can dodge the initial knockup with your Q. Against Renekton, you can Q follow his E, and if he does both casts pretty fast, you can even sometimes follow both of them. Against Rengar, you can follow his passive. Like when he jumps onto an ally, whether it's out of his R or out of the bush, you can follow it. And against Riven, you can dodge her Q3 knockup. So this is the first Q, the second Q and the third Q is going to knock you up. So just Q her to dodge it, and you'll be good to go. And because Riven Q3 is also a leap that goes over walls, this is also perfect to Q follow her, because you also won't get knocked up at the end of it. Against Ryze, you can actually Q follow his R, so when you Q at the right moment, you're going to blink with him to wherever he's casting his R. Against Samira, you can Q follow her E when she targets an enemy over the wall, for example. Against Sejuani, you can just Q dodge her Q knockup. So even when she's just head-on going onto you, your Q procs first, you get displacement immunity, and you won't get knocked up. And because Sejuani Q is also a dash, you can Q follow her over terrain. And even when you get in front of her, you won't get knocked up, cancelling her dash effectively. Against Set, you can dodge his E pull with your Q. But more importantly is that you can dodge his R with your Q, because Set R works like that he attaches the person to him during his R, but displacement immunity counters that, so during your Q, he cannot attach to you. He will still do his R, as you can see there, but he's just going to fly without you. So it's a great way of dodging a lot of damage. Against Shaco, you can Q follow his Q when he blinks to another side of the wall. But this also is very great whenever you Q him and he goes invisible, even in an open area, because then you're still going to be right on top of him, knowing where he is going to reappear approximately. And the situation is similar to Annie's R following with your Q, works with following Shaco's clone with your Q. So when Shaco walks out of range, the clone blinks to him, and if Warwick Qs him at the right moment, he'll just blink with him there, being then close to the Shaco again. Against Shen, you can Q follow his E. Like here I didn't get taunted, for example, but you have a pretty high chance of still getting taunted after it. But even better is that you can Q follow Shen's R, so you're just going to wait until his channel's almost over, and then you can just follow him through the whole map to whoever he is TPing to. Against Shyvana, you can actually Q, follow, and dodge her R cast, because when she transforms into a dragon, she like jumps the distance and also knocks all the people into a certain direction. So not only can you dodge the knock-up from that, you also are going to follow her there. Against Singed, you can just Q his E, and at the right moment, he's just only going to deal damage, but not going to flip you over him. Against Sion, you can dodge his Q knock-up when timed right. You still get damage, but dodging the knock-up is also pretty important, because there is also a stun following that. And you can also dodge Sion R with your Q. So even when he just comes head on to you, just Q him, your Q procs first, you get the displacement immunity, and his knock-up is just gonna get cancelled. This also works perfectly when Sion tries to R away from you, cause you can just Q him, cancel his R, dodge the knock-up, and then he has nowhere to go anymore. Against Skarner, you can dodge his E, because his E is a suppress, but it also works as an attach. And because Warwick can dodge attaches with his displacement immunity, you can dodge his E altogether. Like, you're going to be suppressed for a brief moment, like 0.1 seconds, but at least you're not going to get put into a wall. And because Skarner E can go through walls, you can also Q follow him, and when you get in front of him, you can also stop the dash without getting stunned or suppressed yourself. And because Skarner R is also an attach, you can dodge it by Qing, and because you dodge the attach, you are also going to dodge the suppress altogether. Against Smolder, you can actually Q follow his E, so when he uses his Q to go over walls, just Q him, and you're going to follow him. Against Syndra, you can dodge her E knockback with your Q, but this only works when she doesn't have balls. If she has a ball hitting you during her E, you are actually gonna get stunned. Like, you're still going to dodge the knockback, but you will still get stunned for the duration. Against Tahm Kench, you can kinda dodge his W knockup, cause you see you will still get stunned. But the good thing is that you can still Q him, although he is only just reappearing there. But more importantly is that you can dodge Tahm Kench R with your Q. So you're going to see he's going to stack you up, and then on the third stack he can eat you. And you see all the stacks got consumed. This means that he R'd you. And this works because Tahm Kench R is also an attach. He attaches you inside of his belly or so, and then suppresses you. But because of Warwick's displacement immunity, he cannot get attached to him. Following that, he's dodging the R altogether. Against Taliyah, you can dodge her W, which is also just a simple knockup. And you can Q follow her R. So whenever she R's, she's going to ride on her wall, and you can just follow her there. Against Talon, you can Q follow his Q, because his Q at a range is a small jump. So when he used that to jump over walls, you can follow that. But you can also follow Talon's E, which jumps over walls with your Q. And one mechanic against Teemo is, this is why I put health bars on, is that you can Q through blinds. Like, for some reason, Warwick Q and Warwick R don't count as attacks against Teemo when you're blinded. So you can still hit Teemo with your Q and R while you're still blinded. Whereas, for example, against Shen, which also blocks auto attacks, your Q and R are getting blocked there. Against Thresh, you can dodge his Q, pull, but he can still pull himself towards you if he wants to. The thing is then also that when he pulls himself to an enemy, you can also just Q follow it when he tries to go over a wall with that. And when someone takes Thresh Lantern, you can also just Q the target taking the Lantern, following him all the way to Thresh. And you can also dodge Thresh's E, because that's also just a simple knockup. Against Tristana, you can Q follow her W dash, and it's also pretty easy to react to because she has a very big wind up at the start of it. And you can also kinda dodge Tristana R with your Q, because there was a patch some time ago where they changed Tristana R from only being a knockup to being a knockup and a stun. So before that, you could completely counter Tristana R. Now, because it has a stun, you can only dodge the knockup part, but you will still get stunned for a certain amount of time. Against Trundle, you can Q through his pillar. So if somebody is hugging it on the other side of the wall, for example a minion, you can try to Q it to make an escape. Against TF, you can also follow his R, because his R is also just a blink. So you're going to wait out until he is done with his channel time, Q him, and you're going to follow him wherever he goes. Against Tryndamere, you can Q follow his E, for example when he goes over a wall, or just generally in lane, because then he doesn't have any escape possibility anymore. Against Urgot, you can dodge his E knockup. As you can see, I won't get flipped to the other side, but I will still get stunned. But this is overall a very good to do mechanic, because most Urgot players set up their R with their E, so they E you get flipped over, and they like insta put their R into you, but when they're not expecting it, they E you Q them, you don't get flipped, and they're just shooting the R behind them, winning you the fight more or less then. Against Vayne, similarly to Shaco, when Vayne is in her R and she Qs, she goes invisible, like you can Q her, and while you're following her, you can estimate where she is going to reappear, making it easier to fight her. And you can also Q dodge Vayne E, because that's also just a simple knockback. When you Q her, you're gonna dodge it. Against Vel'Koz, because his E is a knockup, you can dodge it with Warwick's Q, just Q somebody, and you're good to go. Against Vex, you can Q follow Vex R, so when she's dashing, as you can see here, you can just follow her dash with it too. Against Vi, you can dodge her Q knockup, like even if she's just going to Q you, you can dodge it, because your Q goes off first, and then she's only going to hit you, but then you already have the displacement immunity. And here, you can also see that you can Q follow her Q, because her Q is also just a dash. You can also dodge Vi knockup if you're the primary target, because she knocks up the primary target, meaning you can dodge it with Warwick's displacement immunity. But if you're the secondary target, she is pushing and stunning all the non-primary targets away that are in her path, meaning that you will still get stunned if you try to Q her on her way to the main target. Against Viego, you can Q follow his R blink when he, for example, tries to escape over a wall or goes onto your AD carry or so, trying to one-shot them. Against Volibear, you can Q follow his R, because with that he can jump over terrain. So when he tries to make an escape with that, you can also just Q follow it. And then somehow, when you find yourself in a mirror matchup against another Warwick, you can Q follow his R to just follow his R then. And I mean, of course, you can also Q follow a Warwick who is Q following someone else, but this is like a bit more complicated, and it's like just going to be a chain of Warwicks following each other. So, I mean, theoretically you can Q follow another Warwick who's Q following somebody else, but I've never seen that happen. And it's like not going to be happening in your ranked games either. Against Wukong, you can Q follow his W, because with his W he can go over walls. And he goes invisible with that too, so you can also get an approximation of where he's going when he's not using it to go over a wall. With Warwick's Q, you can also Q follow Wukong's E, which he uses to dash to an enemy. And you can also dodge Wukong's R with your Q, but most of the times only one instance, because your Q is probably not going to be up for the second instance. Against Xin, his Q makes it so that his third auto attack is going to knock you up, like you see 1, 2, and the third one is going to be a knockup, and this way you Q him to dodge the knockup then. And you can also follow Xin Zhao's E dash when he dashes to one of your teammates, or to a jungle camp, trying to make an escape or so. And you can also dodge Xin Zhao's R, because it knocks back every non-challenged champion. And if you're not challenged, you can just Q him to dodge that knockup. Against Yasuo, you can dodge his Q3, which is a knockup, with your Q. And you can also Q follow Yasuo's E if he is like also, for example, using it to go over a wall. Like when he's like positioning himself where the enemy is hugging the wall and he can E them to go over the wall. This is like where you see that he is probably going to use you to go over the wall. Or like on Raptors or on Crux, he can also do that. Against Yone, the same thing applies for Yasuo Q, that you can dodge his Q3 knockup with your Q. But it's way easier to dodge because Yone dashes a little bit with his knockup there, meaning that you can just Q him most of the times if you just run straight into him and if he's close to you. If he's pretty far away, then you need to Q something else to dodge it, but if he's pretty close to you, you can just Q him when he starts casting and you can dodge the knockup. And you can also follow Yone's E when he recalls to his body. And this is best to time it when his like resource bar, the orange one, is getting low there. This where when it runs out, he has to recall. Then you can also dodge Yone's A with your Q. Like you can see that I was still getting hit there, but dodged it because of my displacement immunity. Cannot get knocked up then. But because Yone A is also a dash, you can just Q him to follow it when he tries to make an escape with that. Against Warwick, you can Q him or Q any target to just get out of his wall. Sadly, you cannot Q the wall itself, but just Q anything and you'll be out. Against Yuumi, you can Q follow her, Wing onto somebody. Like I personally had an experience where I Q followed a Yuumi over a wall with an enemy, and then I killed the enemy, and then I killed the Yuumi afterwards. So if like the champion she's Wing to is low HP and you are going to Q follow her over the wall, then you can just get a free double kill there, for example. Against Zac, you can dodge his Q knockup, because you see when he hits one target and connects the second one with an auto attack, he knocks them up and throws them together. But if you Q at the right moment, you can dodge it. The same thing also applies the other way around. When he Qs Warwick first and then auto attacks another target, for like a minion for example, then you can also just Q him to dodge the knockup too. You can also dodge Zac's E knockup, and because he's like jumping on top of you, most of the times you can just Q him to dodge it then. And you can also follow Zac's E, so when he's trying to get away, just Q him, and you're going to follow him all the way through because he's also moving pretty fast. And you can also dodge Zac's A knockup. And because you dodge the first instance, the game thinks that you have been knocked up. So the next instances that hit you cannot knock you up anymore. Against Zed, you can Q follow his W shadow. So when he TPs to his shadow, you can just follow that blink. Against Zeri, you can actually Q follow her E when she goes over a wall. It like looks completely scuffed. Like you see Warwick is like biting the wall for 1 or 2 seconds until he like follows the Zeri at the end. But it works. It works. You need to trust the process. Then you can also follow Zig's W with your Q, because when he like gets hit by his own W, he flies away. So you can Q follow that. And you can also dodge his W at the same time, because it also knocks you up. Not for such a great distance, so it's also a 2-on-1 if you follow the Ziggs with it. And even if you're not going to follow him, you can just Q a minion or so to dodge the knockup. Against Zoe, similar to Lilia, because she has a sleep, you're just going to Q at the end of being drowsy, so you're just not going to fall asleep because of your displacement immunity. And you can also follow Zoe's A, so when she goes through a portal, is like on the other side of the wall, you can just Q her and follow her back to the other side. And then last but not least, we have Zyra, where you can dodge her A knockup, so if you time it right, you can dodge her R knockup with your Q because you're displacement immune. Alright, that just currently wraps up every single Warwick Q interaction that exists in the game. I hope you picked up something useful from this video, something that'll help you pull off cleaner plays and climb even higher on the rank ladder. So, thank you for watching and make sure to check out my Twitch where I'm streaming almost daily. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!